The transformation story. 30 days with resistance bands at home. She stood in front of the mirror longer than usual that morning, not admiring anything, just searching. Her reflection looked the same as it had for months, maybe years. The gym membership card sat buried in her wallet, unused since March. Something had to change, but she didn't know what. Like most of us, she wanted results without the overwhelm. Not perfection, just progress. But every attempt at fitness felt like starting over, climbing a mountain that kept getting steeper. The equipment intimidated her. The commute exhausted her before the workout even began. And somewhere along the way, movement stopped feeling like freedom and started feeling like punishment. Then she found them in a drawer. Resistance bands her sister had given her last Christmas, still wrapped in plastic. They looked almost too simple to work, too light, too portable. Part of her doubted they could deliver what heavy iron and expensive machines promised. But what happened next would challenge everything she thought she knew about transformation. She started small, just 10 minutes in her living room before work. No mirrors, no audience, no pressure. The bands felt strange at first, unpredictable tension that forced her muscles to stabilize in ways dumbbells never did. Her shoulders burned during the first lateral raise. Her legs trembled through basic squats. She wondered if she was doing it wrong, or if this was just what effort felt like when you hadn't felt it in a while. By day 3, something unexpected emerged. Her alarm didn't feel like an enemy anymore. She actually looked forward to those 10 minutes, not because the exercise was easy, but because it was hers. No driving, no crowds, no comparison. Just her body learning to remember what strength felt like. The bands stretched and snapped back with a rhythm that somehow made sense. Like a conversation her muscles were finally ready to have. But doubt crept in around day 7. The mirror still showed the same person. Her jeans fit the same way. She thought maybe this was just another false start, another experiment that would fade into the background of her routine. Part of her wanted to quit before failing became official. Then came the moment that shifted everything. She was reaching for a box on the top shelf, something she'd done 1,000 times before, and realized her shoulder didn't ache. That persistent tension she'd carried for years had softened. She wasn't sure when it happened, only that it had. Progress didn't announce itself with fanfare. It whispered through small moments she almost missed. Researchers at Stanford found something similar in their studies on habit formation. When routine meets meaning, consistency finally sticks. The brain doesn't need dramatic transformation to stay motivated. It needs evidence that change is happening, even microscopically. Every time she picked up those bands, her nervous system logged proof. Adaptation was occurring beneath the surface, invisible but real. By week 2, her form improved naturally. The bands taught her things dumbbells never could: how to control the negative portion of each movement, how to maintain tension through the entire range of motion, how to feel her muscles working instead of just moving weight from point A to point B. The constant resistance forced engagement. There was nowhere to hide, no momentum to cheat with, just pure deliberate effort. She started noticing changes beyond the physical. Her sleep deepened, her mood stabilized. That afternoon energy crash that used to hit around 3 o'clock seemed less brutal. Scientists have documented this connection. Resistance training triggers adaptations in mitochondrial function and hormone regulation that extend far beyond muscle tissue. Her body was remembering how to function optimally, one band workout at a time. What surprised me most wasn't just how resistance bands improved my experience with home training, but how everything started to feel different once I switched to the right method. I wasn't expecting such a clear change, and honestly, I tested it more than a few times before I figured out what really worked. This isn't a promotion, just sharing real results that made a noticeable difference for me. I'll leave the link below if you want to explore what I mean. Around day 18, she hit a wall. Not physical, motivational. The newness had worn off. The routine felt routine. She questioned whether 30 days would actually prove anything, or if she was just delaying the inevitable return to her old patterns. Maybe transformation was for other people with different genetics, or more discipline, or fewer excuses. She almost stopped, but that morning she noticed her daughter watching from the hallway, not judging, just observing, and she realized this experiment wasn't just about her anymore. It was about what she was teaching without words, that trying matters, that consistency counts, that you don't need permission from a gym, or trainer, or scale to decide you're worth the effort. So she kept going. The movements became meditative. The burn in her muscles felt less like suffering and more like communication. Her body was telling her what it needed, and for the first time in years, she was listening. The bands created tension, and tension created strength, and strength created something deeper: belief. By day 23, her clothes fit differently. Not dramatically, but noticeably. Her posture had improved from all the shoulder and back work. Her core engaged naturally during daily activities. She moved through the world with less hesitation, less accommodation for weakness she'd assumed was permanent. Biomechanics research supports this. Consistent resistance training reorganizes neural pathways, improving proprioception and motor control, even outside the workout itself. What would you do in that moment when you realize you're becoming someone slightly different than who you were a month ago? Would you celebrate, or would you immediately raise the bar, demanding more proof before allowing yourself satisfaction? She chose something wiser. She acknowledged the change without needing it to be complete. Progress is not a destination, it's a direction. The final week brought unexpected challenges. She traveled for work, sleeping in unfamiliar beds, and eating airport food. But the bands came with her, folded into a corner of her suitcase. She worked out in a hotel room with terrible lighting and no motivation, but she did it anyway. And that's when she understood convenience wasn't just a feature of this method, it was the foundation. When fitness adapts to your life instead of demanding your life adapt to it, sustainability becomes possible. On day 30, she didn't feel radically different. No movie montage, no dramatic reveal, just a quiet knowing that something fundamental had shifted. Her relationship with effort had changed. Movement was no longer something she owed her body or her future self. It was simply part of how she existed now, woven into the fabric of her days like brushing her teeth or making coffee. The science backs this transformation. A study published in the Journal of Strength and Conditioning Research found that resistance band training produces comparable muscle activation to free weights across multiple muscle groups. The constant tension throughout each movement potentially creates superior time under tension, a key driver of hypertrophy and strength adaptation. For someone training at home without heavy equipment, bands offer mechanical advantage that's often underestimated, but the physical changes were almost secondary to the psychological ones. She had proven something to herself that no gym membership or trainer could have taught her, that discipline isn't about punishment or perfection. It's about showing up when no one's watching, especially when you don't feel like it. The bands became a symbol of something larger: agency, self-respect, the quiet power of incremental commitment. When she looked in the mirror again on day 31, it wasn't her reflection that had changed, it was what she believed about herself. The person staring back had followed through, had adapted, had chosen herself repeatedly for a month. That recognition carried more weight than any physical transformation could. Sometimes we only understand strength when we've tested it consistently. She thought about what comes next. Should she continue? Add complexity? Try something new? Or was the real lesson not about the next goal, but about the process itself? That transformation isn't an event, it's a practice. And the only way to fail is to stop believing you're worth the effort. Experts in behavioral psychology emphasize this point. Sustainable change requires identity shift, not just behavior modification. She didn't just complete a 30-day challenge. She became someone who trains, who prioritizes movement, who doesn't need external validation to maintain her practice. The bands were the tool, but the transformation was always about reclaiming ownership of her body and her choices. There were moments of doubt even after 30 days, moments when the routine felt tedious or the results insufficient. But she had learned to recognize those thoughts as weather patterns, temporary conditions that didn't define the climate of her commitment. Resistance, she realized, wasn't just physical, it was mental, emotional, circumstantial, and learning to work through it, rather than wait for it to disappear, was perhaps the most valuable skill she'd developed. She laughed one morning, realizing progress didn't always look like progress. Some days she felt stronger, other days she felt tired, but the consistency itself was the transformation. The act of returning regardless of how she felt or what the mirror showed. This is what sustainability actually looks like. Not perfect, not linear, just persistent. If you're watching this and wondering whether 30 days can change you, the answer is both yes and no. 30 days won't give you a completely different body, but it will give you a completely different relationship with your body. It will prove that you can follow through, that you can adapt, that you don't need perfect conditions or expensive equipment to honor yourself with movement. This story isn't about resistance bands specifically. It's about removing barriers between intention and action. It's about discovering that the obstacles you thought were external, no time, no gym, no equipment, were actually internal. And once you remove those stories, what remains is simply choice. And choice, repeated daily, becomes transformation. Tell us which country or city you're watching from, and what part of this story resonated most with you. Whether you're just starting or you've been training for years, your experience matters. See you in the next video. Bye.